I'm officially ambassador of the Netherlands to Australia since the 26th of September last year. That is the day I presented my credentials to Governor General Quinton Bryce. Apart from the embassy in Canberra, we have 6 other branch offices, if you might say. We have a consulate general in Sydney, and we have 5 Dutch honorary consulates. Apart from the one in Melbourne, we have one in Adelaide, Perth, Brisbane and Hobart. And besides that, as ambassador in Canberra, I'm also accredited to 4 other countries in the region. That is Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, Nauru and Vanuatu. And I have to travel to all these places also, which is quite hardship, as you can imagine. The main tasks of an ambassador are to look after the interests of the Netherlands as a whole and of its citizens. And the ways which are most visible to all is what nowadays is called economic diplomacy and consular diplomacy. Economic diplomacy could be described as providing services to Dutch business in Australia in my case. And not only promoting Dutch business in general terms, but also helping them to find their way, providing information and opening doors if necessary. But also sometimes in case of problems or issues, trying to assist them. As an example, one of the first issues that came on my desk just after I arrived in Australia concerned the freezer trawler Abel Tasman. That is a big fishing ship, property of a Dutch-Australian joint venture, which was about to start fishing in Australian waters, but was prohibited from doing so at the last moment because of new legislation. And from the embassy, we have been in contact with the authorities in Canberra, the federal authorities and Parliament, about this case. Consular diplomacy, of course, means providing services to Dutch citizens in Australia by, for instance, issuing passports, other declarations and documents connected to Dutch nationality. And it means also assisting, if necessary, in times of trouble. For instance, when they have been involved in accidents, crimes, or even when they're put into prison. And all this, it should go without saying, within the boundaries of Australian law. The less visible aspects of the work of an embassy, which are equally important, are in contact with representatives of the Australian government to provide information about the Netherlands and about developments in the Netherlands, representing the Netherlands at occasions, official occasions of the Australian government, and sharing with them ideas on international policies. It is where we want to promote our ideas in international politics and our initiatives to be able to find support for them with Australian authorities. For instance, on things like human rights, disarmament, or development cooperation. Turning to the specific subject of Australia-Netherlands relations, I think, and I've been here only 4 months, so I know everything already, I think they can be characterized as manifold and excellent, which makes my tasks not very hard. Although we are very, very far apart, we find time and again that we have very many connections in very many fields of life. And I must say, there are much more connections than I personally imagined when I arrived in Australia. For easy reference, some have summarized these connections as the 4 M's. The third M is for migration. As you all know, because probably a fair number of you all here are living proof of that, in the 50s and the 60s of the last century, a great number of people emigrated from the Netherlands to Australia. According to our data, there are approximately 350,000. Recently, a new wave of younger and mobile Dutch expats have in Australia arrived to work and live. And I have seen some representatives of that group also here tonight. According to the national census, which was held in Australia in 2011, the number of people who identified themselves as having Dutch ancestry was 335,000. The number of people in Australia with the Netherlands as country of birth was a little over 76,000. And still, according to the 2011 census, around 37,000 people in Australia speak Dutch at home. These are sizable numbers. The Dutch community in Australia is on the whole not as visible as other communities, since Dutch migrants have integrated very well. But what would be interesting to find out, in our view, is whether the second and third generation of Dutch migrants still consider their Dutch roots important. How and in what way do they feel connected to the Netherlands? I think it's important to know about that to determine whether or not the Dutch community in Australia can be a factor in strengthening the ties with the Netherlands. And in order to find out, we have commissioned a small research project together with the Dutch Embassy in New Zealand, where there's also a large Dutch community. The fourth and last M is the M for mercantile, for business. Yes, we are very far apart, and trade volumes are consequently quite modest. But our two countries have been trading for a very long time, and many Dutch companies, large and small, are already present in Australia. And the Netherlands is the fourth largest investor in Australia. Not everybody knows that, so that's true, yeah. We from our side would very much like to enlarge our business relations. And we think there are plenty of opportunities for Dutch and Australian business people to work together. For instance, in the field of water management and horticulture, sectors in which the Netherlands has a globally acclaimed expertise and knowledge. So, although I'm only here now for a little over 4 months, my impression is that there is a solid basis for expanding our already excellent ties and relations, especially, as I said, in business. Apart from that, if I can come back again at the international politics that I talked about in the beginning, less visible but very real is the fact that Australia and the Netherlands are working together in a number of international subjects. We are like-minded and we are supporting each other's initiatives in specific areas of international politics. And the Netherlands is at the moment supporting Australia now that it has a seat in the Security Council. So all in all, I think based on these 4 aspects I lined out for you, work cut out for me. I have interesting things to do in these 4 subjects, and I'm looking forward to my posting here and to contributing to bridging the distance, as I said.
I don't think the mutiny on the Bounty or I don't even think Titanic can touch this story. This is such a huge story. I think it's every filmmaker's dream to come across a story like this, because it has drama, it has sex, lust, greed, climax, everything is in this film. You literally don't have to do anything. You don't have to embellish it at all. It's all there. It's a fantastic story that can be told the way it is. The latest film I made is called Shackles of the Batavia. It's about two individuals who were cast away on the Australian mainland following the wrecking of the Batavia ship in 1629. The Batavia was a ship that was built in 1628 in the port city of Amsterdam. A friend of mine, who happens to be my DOP as well, he told me about this fantastic story about the Batavia that wrecked off the coast of Geraldton. Now, at first when he told me the story, I didn't really buy into it because it sounded just too bizarre and out of this world. But then one day when I visited him in Geraldton, I picked up a book on his coffee table called Island of the Angry Ghost. I couldn't put the book down, and it just fascinated me, and it sucked me into the story. It just blew me away because I could not understand why they did the action that they took. And I felt that I needed to understand it further personally for my own personal reasons. So I went about trying to explain it through my film. But because Batavia is such a large story, it's difficult to tell the story in a short film. I decided to pick these two individuals that were sentenced to be marooned on the mainland of Australia. They became the first Westerners to reside in Australia in 1629. This is about 150 years or so before the British First Fleet first came to Australia. This is way long before that. I think what fascinates me most is the psychology behind the action of the men that were set marooned on the Abrolhos Islands. The mutiny, the murders and the mayhem that followed in these small islands. It is a true story. This actually happened. Now, the interesting thing about these two individuals is they were never heard of again after that. They were set marooned on the mainland, and they were forgotten after that. History basically almost forgot about them. There were a lot of there's some small excerpts here and there about them being marooned, but no one ever came across them after that. So, to me, this is a fantastic opportunity for me to experiment with my story. I wanted to mix this two part of the story, the fact and the fiction, together to tell my hypothesis of what could have happened on the mainland. The documents from the first half of the voyage was destroyed by the mutineers, but subsequently the Commodore Palsad, he did do a lot of documentation as well, and other players in the story, like the minister who lost his family in the island. The entire family was massacred, also had recorded his version of the story, and it was also retold again. I think if I got the dates right, at about 1640 something by another writer. And for my personal research, I read a lot of books, as many books as I could come across about the Batavia, both fact and fiction. And I also have, I contacted the Netherlands library, and I got the exact translation of Commodore Palsad's records, his own records. So there's a lot of research was required because we wanted to get as accurate as possible. To me as a filmmaker, as much as there are different kind of stories you tell different ways. I feel the Batavia has to be told as authentically as possible. So that's why I put a lot of effort in my research. This is the actual hull of the ship. This was actually recovered from the wreck site on the Abrolhos Island, on a place called the Morning Reef. That's where the Batavia ran aground and eventually broke apart. This timber here is almost 400 years old, and it's just amazing that it was so much of it was left intact, and the fact that they could actually reshape it into the hull is just amazing. This stone was actually cut in the Netherlands, and then it was placed at the bottom of the ship as ballast. And then when it was supposed to be taken to Batavia to become the new gateway. Imagine the tools that were used, the hands that touched it more than 400 years ago, the lives that it touched. And for almost 400 years it was underwater and then recovered and brought here for the world to behold. When I felt compelled to pen it down, I had to obviously write a script. It took me a couple of months to toy with the idea and some changes and some drafts, roughly about 8 drafts, before I could finally decide, like, this is how I want to tell my story. What followed next was, of course, I had to recruit my team. I started a Facebook page called the Batavia Movie on Facebook, and that's where I started recruiting my teams. And I was really, really lucky that I got such a wonderful team. None of them were paid. Some of the crew actually chipped in some funds as well. So it was a labor of love. And we had a crew of international background. We had a crew from Pakistan. I had a recent migrant from South Africa. So we had a really international crew, and it was really a fascinating team to work with. And after location hunting, obviously we got some funds together. We did rehearsals, casting and stuff like that, and we had volunteers come aboard as well to do costumes. You know, we made our own costumes, and we were very, very lucky that one of our crew member who was supposed to come aboard as our boom operator turned out to be a master craftsman. So he made the muskets, he made the pistols. So Brendan Callan is his name, and he was just basically God sent as far as the props were concerned. I think personal highlight was how we were able to shoot on the same day as they landed. So we started shooting on 15th of November last year, and they actually landed on the same dates as well. So there was a little bit of my tweaking as well, but yeah, coincidence. The timing was just right, so everything fell into place. I think that was really important as a filmmaker, because we were actually transported to 1629 with these two individuals out there in the cold, out there in the heat. And I was just told by my editor that the exact running time of the film is actually 16 minutes 29 seconds, so which is the year the Batavia shipwrecked. So it's just, I don't know, I'm getting goosebumps, so I don't know what it means. So we'll just have to wait and see if it's a good omen or a curse. To me, as a filmmaker, you have this ability to go into people's life. It's like being reborn. Each character that you build, that you tell, it's like you're being able to teleport yourself into that character. You don't have to be like in Hinduism. I'm not a Hindu, but in Hinduism you have the reincarnation and all that. To me, telling each story, the storyteller is reincarnated into each story. It's like you're living a multitude of lifetimes in this one lifetime. I think that's the most amazing thing about filmmaking, is that you could go into different stories, different lives, and be actually able to live in that life, even though momentarily. To me, that's the most amazing thing. We've booked a cinema, nothing fancy, just like a regular cinema, and we are hoping that people will come and watch it. And no gala night, no limousines like in Hollywood or anything like that. It's just independent filmmakers inviting the family and friends and maybe a little bit of press. See how that goes. After the first screening, I'm hoping to send it to film festivals all over the world, and hopefully, they get chosen to be screened, maybe 1 or 2 awards. I wouldn't mind.
Melbourne is een geweldige stad, maar is het ook echt die meest leefbare stad ter wereld waar het tijdschrift The Economist het altijd over heeft? Ik twijfel soms, maar je ziet het aan de hele kleine details. Of beter gezegd, de hele kleine kamertjes in de stad. Tja, want stel je bent in een van de drukste stukjes in de stad in het kloppende hart van Melbourne, Federation Square. Het plein waar mensen elkaar ontmoeten, waar je lekker kunt rondhangen. En ja, waar je ook een plasje kunt gaan doen. Want als je echt nodig moet hier, is dat no worries. Onder het plein loop je zo naar het toilet. De eerste keer dat ik hier was, kon ik het eigenlijk niet geloven. Het was hier best wel schoon. Hier zou je zelfs een grote boodschap kunnen doen. En kijk eens, het water dat je hier doorspoelt in het toilet is regenwater. Dat van het plein wordt opgevangen. Slimme jongens die Aussies. Maar als ik ze vertel hoe ontzettend blij ik ben met deze en de andere 60 openbare toiletten in het centrum, dan begrijpen ze me niet helemaal.
What are your toilets like in Holland? I don't think the technology between toilets would be that different.
There are no public toilets. Hardly.
I think you should make some.
What do you have to do if you need to go toilet then?
You don't have toilets, like public toilets? I find that hard to believe. No public toilets. What do you do?
But is it like a law that you can't have toilets? I don't get how it's not working.
This is how the Dutch do it. Als we op de Federation Square van Amsterdam zijn, dat heet de Dam, dan vind je daar dus echt 0 openbare toiletten. Ja, er is wel iets, maar dan moet je een stukje lopen. We spoelen dus maar even door, want het is echt een flink stuk. Uiteindelijk kom je dan bij dit geval. We noemen het een plaskrul. En gadverdamme, wat is het te smerig.
Ga nog naar de openbare toilet.
Wat wij meestal doen is dat wij plannen dat we ergens wat gaan drinken. En dat we dan in het restaurant of in het café waar we zitten, dat we daar naar het toilet gaan en niet naar de openbare toiletten.
Want als je s'avonds in de stad bent, dan zoek je toch wel meestal of in het restaurant of in de kroeg zelf. Maar dan of heb je ook wel eens een gracht heb je wel eens gevonden.
Ja.
Op een grote speelplein bij ons in de buurt was het al niet veel beter. Er was een wc, maar deze ouders weten net als ik wat het probleem is.
Meestal is het wc'tje dicht, jammer genoeg.
We moeten allemaal wel eens een keertje met de kinderen en ja, moesten naar de wc. Kan je niks vinden hier.
Er is wel eens voorgekomen dat we toch eventjes ergens in de bosjes hebben moeten doen met haar. Dus ja.
In Melbourne is wildplassen echt not done.
I think it's just something in the Australian psyche about being tidy and being clean. And I think they've extended that to the toilet facilities too. And the police are very strict that if you don't use the toilet and you do like a pee in public, you could be arrested.
Arrested?
So, yes, absolutely. And fined and decent behavior.
That's okay. I think it's a couple of $100. So I'd rather have, if I had to pay for a toilet or pay a $200 fine, I'd probably pay for the toilet.
Gelukkig hoeven wij op de speelplaats niet boetes te riskeren. Er staat hier een toilet. Hij is altijd open en kan zelfs praten.
Welcome to Exoloo. Door locked. Your maximum use time is 10 minutes.
Om het gezellig te maken zet hij ook een leuk muziekje voor je op en meestal is hij redelijk schoon. Maar er is één ding. Vandaag is het toiletpapier op. Gelukkig wil ik bijna zeggen. Niet alles in dit land is perfect geregeld.